The silence in the Vance mansion wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like a velvet shroud smothering all traces of life. Arthur Vance, a man whose name was a synonym for success in the city's financial district, had discovered the one thing his fortune could not buy: a cure. His sprawling home, a monument of glass and minimalist art, felt less like a palace and more like a pristine, state-of-the-art prison. Every surface was sterile, every corner dust-free, a desperate attempt to create a fortress against the microscopic enemy that was methodically dismantling his son. Leo, his 10-year-old boy, was a ghost in this ivory tower. He drifted through the cavernous rooms, his skin pale as parchment, his movements slow and deliberate, conserving an energy that dwindled with each passing day. A rare aggressive autoimmune disorder had turned his own body against him. The world's top specialists had been flown in on private jets, their briefcases filled with charts and theories, their voices a symphony of cautious, expensive sympathy. They spoke of remission, of management, of experimental treatments with terrifying lists of side effects. But the word cure was never uttered. For a man like Arthur, who built his empire on definitive outcomes and ruthless certainty, this ambiguity was a special kind of hell. He could liquidate a company in an afternoon, but could not command a single rogue cell in his own son's blood. To stand down, one Tuesday, on the reluctant advice of a therapist who suggested a change of scenery, Arthur took Leo to the city's botanical gardens. It was a place of vibrant, almost violent life, a stark contrast to their sterile existence. Orchids dripped with color, ancient ferns unfurled in primordial shapes, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. Arthur pushed Leo's lightweight wheelchair along the winding brick paths, his jaw tight. He hated this forced pantomime of normalcy. He saw the pitying glances from other families, the healthy children chasing butterflies while his own son could barely lift his head to watch them. Leo was quiet, his large, dark eyes absorbing the riot of green around him. He wasn't sad, not in the way Arthur was. He was observant, resigned. He pointed a thin finger towards a small, secluded grove of magnolia trees. "Can we sit there, Dad?" Arthur nodded, maneuvering the chair into the shade. The air was cooler here, the light dappled and gentle. It was in this quiet grove that their world tilted on its axis. A small girl, no older than Leo, detached herself from an older woman sitting on a nearby bench. She had skin the color of rich, dark soil after a rain, and two thick braids adorned with colorful beads that clicked softly as she walked. She wore a simple yellow sundress and dusty sandals, and in her hands, she clutched a handful of dandelions. She wasn't looking at Arthur. Her gaze was fixed entirely on Leo. She stopped a few feet from the wheelchair, her head tilted with an unnerving seriousness. The old woman, her grandmother by the look of her, watched with a calm, patient expression. The little girl, whose name was Amara, took another step forward. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the air like a silver thread. "He's hurting," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Arthur's defenses, always on high alert, snapped into place. "He's fine," he said, his tone clipped and dismissive. "We're just resting." Amara ignored him. Her eyes, deep and old, stayed on Leo. "It's in his blood," she continued, her voice soft but certain. "It's like a fire inside him. It makes him tired." Leo, who rarely engaged with strangers, shifted in his chair. He looked at the girl, a flicker of curiosity in his weary eyes. Arthur felt a surge of irritation. "Look, kid, we appreciate the concern, but..." Before he could finish, Amara looked directly at him, her gaze so steady it was disarming. She held out her hand, not for money, but as a gesture of profound, unshakable confidence. "I can help him," she said, her words clear and deliberate. "I'll heal your son." The sentence hung in the humid air. For a moment, there was only the buzz of a distant bee and the soft rustle of magnolia leaves. Then, it happened. Arthur Vance laughed. It wasn't a gentle chuckle. It was a harsh, barking sound, torn from the depths of his frustration and disbelief. It was the laugh of a man who had consulted with Nobel laureates and had now been offered a miracle by a Child holding a bouquet of weeds. You'll heal him? Arthur repeated, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. You? And how do you plan on doing that? With those? He gestured dismissively at the dandelions. Amara did not flinch. Her expression didn't change. She simply closed her hand around the flowers. They're not weeds, she said quietly. They're medicine. Just like the willow is medicine for a fever, and the quiet is medicine for the noise. Arthur shook his head, the smirk fading into a look of weary condescension. That's very sweet. Here. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a crisp $50 bill from a thick money clip. He extended it to her. Buy yourself some ice cream, and leave us alone, please. Amara looked at the money as if it were a strange, uninteresting insect. She didn't take it. Behind her, the old woman slowly rose and began to walk over. She was tall and regal, her face a beautiful map of wrinkles, her silver hair coiled in an elegant wrap. She placed a gentle hand on Amara's shoulder. Amara, the woman said, her voice a low, melodic hum. The gentleman is not ready to listen. But Nana, he needs to, Amara insisted, her gaze still locked on Arthur. The doctors are looking in the wrong place. They're looking for a fight. But his body needs peace. The sheer audacity of it all was breathtaking to Arthur. This child, this family, diagnosing his son's condition in a public park, dismissing the most advanced medical science money could buy. We're leaving, Arthur said abruptly, his hand gripping the handles of the wheelchair. The brief, fragile moment of peace was shattered. He felt exposed, foolish, and angry. Angry at the world, at the disease, and now, irrationally, at this little girl and her serene grandmother for daring to offer a hope he had long since concluded was a fool's currency. As he turned the chair to leave, Leo's weak voice piped up. Wait! Arthur stopped, surprised. Leo was looking at Amara. What kind of peace? He asked. Amara took a step closer, her grandmother's hand still on her shoulder. The kind that comes from the earth, she said softly. The kind your body has forgotten how to make. She opened her small hand and extended one of the dandelions to him. This is a start. It cleans the blood. Arthur wanted to snatch it away, to scold her for giving his son false hope, for peddling folk remedy nonsense. But he saw the look on Leo's face. For the first time in months, it wasn't a look of pain or exhaustion. It was a look of genuine interest. With a trembling hand, Leo reached out and took the small yellow flower. His fingers, so thin and fragile, closed around its stem. The grandmother, Nana Rose, met Arthur's gaze over the children's heads. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a deep, profound sadness, as if she could see the heavy chains of disbelief he carried. Some roots grow in the dark, sir, she said softly. You just have to be willing to dig. Then, they turned and walked away, leaving Arthur Vance standing in the dappled sunlight, a $50 bill still in his hand, feeling an unfamiliar and deeply unsettling emotion, doubt. The dandelion sat in a glass of water on Leo's bedside table, a cheerful yellow sun in the sterile white room. Arthur had allowed it, a small concession to the strange peace he'd seen on his son's face in the park. But in the days that followed, Leo's condition worsened. A new wave of fever set in, and the pain returned with a vengeance, clawing at his joints. The specialists were summoned again. More tests were run. More hushed, grim conversations took place in the hallway outside Leo's room. They suggested a new, highly aggressive immunosuppressant therapy. The list of potential side effects was a page long and included organ damage and an increased risk of infections that could prove fatal. Arthur sat by his son's bed one night, listening to his shallow breathing, the beep of the machines a constant, mocking reminder of his failure. He looked at the wilting dandelion. The kind that comes from the earth, the girl had said. His body needs peace. The words echoed in his mind, a bizarre counter-melody to the doctor's clinical jargon. It was ridiculous. It was insane. But what was the alternative? To subject his son to a chemical barrage that might destroy what little strength he had left? He looked at Leo's sleeping face, a tear slipping from the corner of his eye and tracing a path into his hairline. For the first time in his adult life, Arthur Vance admitted to himself that he was beaten. His logic, his money, his power, they were all useless. He was at the very bottom of a pit of despair, and it was there in the dark that he remembered the old woman's words, "Some roots grow in the dark. You just have to be willing to dig." The next morning, he made a decision that defied every rational bone in his body. He called his head of security, a former intelligence officer named Marcus. "I need you to find someone for me," Arthur said, his voice low. "A little girl named Amara and her grandmother. They were at the botanical gardens on Tuesday. The girl is about 10, black, with braids. The grandmother is tall, elegant. That's all I have." It was a testament to Arthur's influence that by evening Marcus had an address. It was in a part of the city Arthur's car, a sleek German sedan, had never before entered. The houses were small but well kept, with postage stamp lawns and porches adorned with wind chimes and potted plants. Marcus pulled up in front of a modest bungalow painted a soft blue, a riot of herbs and flowers growing in a lovingly tended front garden. "This is it, sir," Marcus said, looking uncertain. Arthur took a deep breath. He felt utterly out of his element. He got out of the car, his expensive suit feeling like a costume. As he walked up the path, the scent of rosemary and lavender filled the air. He knocked on the door. It was opened by Nana Rose. She wasn't surprised to see him. She simply looked at him with those same patient, all-knowing eyes. Arthur started, his usual confidence gone, replaced by a raw, clumsy desperation. "My son, he's worse. The doctors, they want to try something extreme." He felt a lump form in his throat. "Your granddaughter, she said she could help." Nana Rose studied his face for a long moment, reading the terror and the crumbling pride etched there. She didn't gloat or say, "I told you so." She simply nodded and stepped aside. "Come in," she said. "Amara is in the back." The inside of the house was the antithesis of his own. It was small, warm, and filled with life. Bookshelves overflowed. Colorful woven blankets were draped over mismatched but comfortable furniture, and every available surface seemed to hold jars of dried herbs, bundles of twigs, and bowls of polished stones. The air smelled of brewing tea and something else, something old and comforting, like baking bread and history. Amara was sitting at a large wooden kitchen table, meticulously grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. She looked up when Arthur entered, her expression as serious as it had been. "In the park. You're ready to listen now," she stated. Arthur swallowed his pride. It tasted like ash. "Yes," he said, the word barely a whisper. "I am." What followed was not a negotiation. Nana Rose explained that they did not deal in payment. "Healing is not a transaction," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "It is a covenant, a partnership between the healer, the patient, and the earth. We will help Leo, but you must trust the process. All of it. No half measures. No running back to your doctors at the first sign of a fever." Arthur's mind reeled. This was everything he was programmed to fight against. Uncertainty, a lack of control, a reliance on something he couldn't quantify or understand. But then he thought of Leo's frail body and the poison they wanted to pump into it. He looked at Amara, who was now carefully spooning the ground herbs into small cloth bags, her movements precise and full of purpose. "Okay," he agreed. The word feeling like a leap off a cliff. They decided that Leo would come to them. Arthur was horrified at the idea of taking his son out of his sterile environment, but Nana Rose was insistent. "That house of yours is a sick room," she said, not unkindly. "It holds the energy of the illness. He needs to be where the life is." The next day, against the frantic protests of his medical team, Arthur bundled a feverish and weak Leo into his car and drove him back to the small blue house. He carried his son inside, feeling the boy's light weight in his arms, a terrifying reminder of what was at stake. They laid Leo down on a soft bed in a small, sunny room that looked out onto the back garden. The room didn't have a television or any electronic gadgets. It just had a window, a bookshelf, and a vase of fresh wildflowers on the nightstand. The healing began, and it was nothing like Arthur had imagined. There were no incantations, no dramatic rituals. It was a slow, quiet, methodical process. Amara would bring Leo teas brewed from roots and leaves Arthur had never heard of: burdock, red clover, nettle. The teas were bitter, and at first, Leo resisted. But Amara would sit with him, telling him stories as he sipped. Stories of the forest, of animals, of the stars. She told him the tea wasn't just a drink, it was the strength of the earth being shared with him. Nana Rose would massage Leo's feet with warm oils infused with pine and cedar, her strong, gentle hands working away the deep, aching tension in his body. She explained to Arthur that the body holds fear in its muscles and that to heal the blood, you first had to soothe the vessel. Arthur watched, a silent, anxious sentinel. He was a king in a foreign land, stripped of his authority. His role was simply to be a father, to hold his son's hand, to wipe his brow, to be present. It was a role he realized he had long outsourced to nurses and nannies. Amara did something else, something strange. She would take a bowl of clean water and place it by Leo's bed overnight. In the morning, she would take the bowl outside and pour the water at the base of a large, ancient oak tree in the backyard. "What is that for?" Arthur finally asked one day, unable to contain his skepticism. Amara looked at him, surprised he had to ask. "The water listens," she said simply. "It sits with his pain all night. In the morning, I give the pain to the tree. The tree is old and strong. It can hold it." Arthur wanted to scoff, to call it primitive superstition, but he couldn't deny what he was seeing. After 3 days, Leo's fever, which had raged for over a week, began to recede. A touch of color returned to his cheeks. He started eating small amounts of the simple, nourishing food Nana Rose prepared: vegetable broths, soft grains, baked sweet potatoes. The real test came a week into their stay. Leo woke up in the middle of the night, crying out. His temperature had spiked dramatically, and he was shivering uncontrollably. Arthur's carefully constructed trust crumbled in an instant. This was it. A seizure, a septic shock. His mind raced through the doctor's dire warnings. His hand shot to his pocket for his phone, his thumb hovering over the speed dial for the hospital. "Don't," a calm voice said from the doorway. It was Nana Rose, holding a lamp. Amara was right behind her, her face a mask of calm focus. "He needs a doctor. Look at him." Arthur's voice was a panicked hiss. "He needs us." Nana Rose corrected him gently. "This is the fire we spoke of. The sickness is fighting back. It is a cleansing fire. We must not be afraid of it." What happened next was a blur of activity that felt both ancient and urgent. Nana Rose stripped Leo's bed and began sponging his body with cool water infused with yarrow and elderflower. Amara, meanwhile, prepared a potent, dark-smelling poultice of crushed mustard seed and ginger, which she wrapped in cloth and placed on Leo's chest and the soles of his feet. The room filled with the sharp, purifying scent. They didn't speak much. They worked in a seamless, practiced rhythm. Arthur could only stand in the corner, feeling large and useless, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was being asked to place his son's life in the hands of a child, an old woman, and a pile of herbs, while the full might of modern medicine was just a phone call away. Every instinct screamed at him to intervene, to take control, to trust the science and the steel. But then he looked at Amara. She was leaning over Leo, her small hand on his forehead, whispering to him, not prayers, but assurances. "It's okay," she murmured. "Your body is strong. It's winning. Just breathe with me. Let the fever do its work. It's burning away the last of the shadows." Leo's shivering was violent, but between his chattering teeth, he seemed to be listening, his breathing matching the slow, steady rhythm Amara was coaching. Arthur saw something then that stopped him cold. It wasn't magic. It was a profound, fearless connection. Amara wasn't just treating a disease. She was tending to a soul. He lowered his hand from his pocket. He stayed. He watched. He waited. The night stretched into an eternity. Arthur did not sit down. He paced the small space between the door and the window, a caged animal. Sometime before dawn, the shivering subsided. The frantic heat radiating from Leo's skin began to cool. His breathing deepened, becoming even and peaceful. Amara and Nana Rose, their work done, cleaned up quietly, and left a fresh bowl of water by the bed, Arthur finally sank into a chair, emotionally and physically exhausted. He watched his son sleep a true, deep sleep for the first time in what felt like years. As the first rays of dawn painted the window frame, Leo's eyes fluttered open. He looked not at his father, but around the room, as if seeing it for the first time. He turned his head and gave Arthur a small, weak, but genuine smile. "Hi, Dad," he whispered, his voice clear. "I'm hungry." 2 words. Simple words. But for Arthur Vance, they were the most beautiful words ever spoken. They were the sound of a promise kept, of a battle won not with force, but with faith. Tears streamed down his face, not of sorrow or fear, but of a shattering, humbling gratitude. That cracked open the cynical armor he had worn for a lifetime. In the weeks that followed, Leo's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. He began walking in the garden, first with his father's support, then on his own. Amara taught him the names of the plants, showing him which leaves could be crushed to soothe an insect bite and which flowers made the sweetest tea. He learned to sit in silence, to feel the sun on his skin, and to listen to the language of the birds. He was not just getting better, he was becoming whole. The haunted, weary look in his eyes was replaced by the bright, curious spark of a 10-year-old boy. When Arthur finally took him back to the hospital for a checkup, the specialists were dumbfounded. They ran every test imaginable. The inflammatory markers in his blood that had once been astronomically high were now within a normal range. The disease was, for all intents and purposes, in a deep and total remission. They called it a spontaneous recovery, a 1 in a million statistical anomaly. They could not explain it. They wrote papers about it, but Arthur knew it wasn't an anomaly. It was the result of a different kind of science, a wisdom that didn't come from a laboratory. The day he was to take Leo home, Arthur went to see Nana Rose and Amara alone. He brought with him a briefcase. He sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Amara had ground her herbs, and he opened it. Inside were bearer bonds, untraceable, the equivalent of $10 million. "I can never repay you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but I want you to have this. For your family, for your future. Buy a bigger house, travel the world, never worry about money again." Nana Rose looked at the briefcase, then at Arthur. She slid it gently back, across the table towards him. Amara, who had been watching from the doorway, came and stood by her grandmother's side. "We told you, Mr. Vance," Nana Rose said, her voice soft. "This is not for sale." "But I have to do something," Arthur stammered. This is what I have to give." "You have already given us the only thing we asked for," she replied. "Your trust." She placed her hand over his. "What Amara has is a gift, a knowledge passed down through generations. It is a part of our heritage, our connection to the earth. To put a price on it is to diminish it, to turn it into a commodity. It belongs to everyone, the air and the water." Arthur was speechless. He, a master of the deal, was being given a lesson in a value system so foreign, it might as well have been from another planet. "So, what do I do?" he asked, genuinely lost. "How do I say thank you?" Amara, who had been silent, spoke up. "You can help the tree," she said. Arthur looked at her, confused. "The tree?" "The big oak in the back," she clarified. "The one that held Leo's pain. There are others who are sick. There are other trees that are forgotten, and other gardens that need planting." In that moment, Arthur Vance finally understood. The real payment wasn't money. It was action. It was change. He went home a different man. The glass mansion no longer felt like a prison. It felt empty. He sold it within a month. He established the Vance Foundation for Integrative Wellness. But he didn't put his own name in lights. He appointed Nana Rose and a board of herbalists, indigenous elders, and community leaders to run it. Its mission was not to build sterile clinics, but to fund community gardens in underserved neighborhoods, to protect wild lands where medicinal plants grew, and to create programs that would allow elders like Nana Rose to pass their knowledge on to younger generations like Amara. Arthur didn't run the foundation from a high-rise office. He was on the ground, his expensive suits replaced by work boots and jeans. He learned how to test soil, how to build a raised garden bed, how to listen more than he spoke. He and Leo spent their weekends working in a garden in Amara's neighborhood, side by side with the families who lived there. Leo, now vibrant and healthy, would often be seen following Amara, a willing apprentice, learning the quiet, powerful secrets of the earth. Arthur Vance, the millionaire who had once laughed at a little girl with a handful of dandelions, had discovered a new kind of wealth. It wasn't measured in stock prices or market caps, but in the rustle of healthy leaves, the taste of fresh picked food, and the sound of his son's genuine, unbridled laughter. He had come seeking a cure for his son, and in the end, he had found one for himself. The story of the millionaire and the little girl became a quiet legend in the city, a testament to the fact that the greatest power doesn't always reside in the tallest towers, and the most profound wisdom often comes in the smallest, most overlooked packages. It's a reminder that true wealth is not what you can buy, but what you can nurture, and that sometimes, the only way to heal is to humble yourself before a truth that money cannot own, and science cannot yet explain. The most powerful forces in this world are not always the loudest. Often, they are as quiet and as resilient as a flower growing through a crack in the pavement. Thank you for watching. If you believe that truth can be found in unexpected places, and that true power lies in humility and connection, please subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge the status quo and champion the voice of hidden wisdom.